from the standpoint, it's a warning. I want people to be warned what's coming. We can't be like an ostrich with our head in the sand. We need to prepare, just like someone wants to prepare for a hurricane. They want to prepare for a tornado. But if they don't sound the siren, I'm just came to my mind about Hawaii fires, and the alarms didn't go off and so many people died. Well, I'm not saying, that you are to be afraid. What I'm trying to do is help you not be afraid, because I see what's coming.
Yes, sir.
Right. How important is it to know, because reading in your book, we read over your book and everything, how is it important that we know God's timetable versus man's timetable?
It is vital. It is absolutely vital. And the church hasn't been on God's calendar for several thousand years. God's timetable in Genesis 1:14, he literally said he created the sun and the moon for signs. Well, the only sign they can make is an eclipse. And the nice thing is no false prophet can manipulate an eclipse. And not only
Right.
that, it speaks in every tribe, nation, and tongue understands an eclipse. But he said, let them. Our pagan Gregorian calendar only uses the sun. The Muslim calendar only uses the moon. The Chinese calendar does use the sun and the moon, but their Lunar New Year just started this weekend, and it's the year of the dragon, which is quite fascinating. But I think that God, he wants us to use his calendar. Think of it like a date timer. Okay, God has a date timer, and he 6,000 years ago put down when he wanted to meet with us. I mean, people believe in divine appointments, which I do as well. But guess what? Most of them are scheduled. We just need to be there when he asks us to be there. And so I believe that eclipses on the feast days. Now, NASA says there are 12,000 solar eclipses over 5,000 years, 12,000 lunar eclipses, but all those eclipses aren't important. What's important is the one that fall on his feast days. That's why we need to be on his calendar. Just like I'm talking to you, it's a 3-hour difference time zone. If we're going to meet, we have to agree on what time zone. Well, if you want to meet with God, you need to understand what time and what day he wants to meet with you.
Yes, sir.
Exactly. And I was reading through that, and I discovered that a lot of times when we have these lunar eclipses and solar eclipses, and even through some research that I was doing, some purging of some holidays and things, according to the pagan calendars that we celebrate, which God tells us not to celebrate, but he tells us to celebrate his feast and recognize them and honor him. But I noticed something, and I told Scott, I said, this has got to be something significant here, because every time I researched it, it was either right before a war or right after a war, things got introduced in America. And I was like, there's got to be something tied with wars, something significant. Can you expound a little bit about that?
Yes. What God has done, a solar eclipse means judgment is coming on a nation. A lunar eclipse refers to a warning to Israel. Now, what's amazing, of the 12,000 solar eclipses, only 8 total solar eclipses since we've been a nation in 1776 have completely crossed the United States. Only 8 total solar eclipses. Now, what I mean by that, some might hit California and Texas, but I'm talking going all the way across, east to west or south to north. There's only been 8, and they happened during the Revolutionary War, during the Civil War, during the Vietnam War. And then 7 years ago in 2017, we had the one that went from Oregon all the way through to Carolina, right? And that was the only total solar eclipse out of 12,000 that only crossed the United States. It didn't cross Canada, didn't cross Mexico. And so this being a solar eclipse is only going over the United States. That told me 7 years ago, judgment is coming to the United States. Well, now we have this total solar eclipse that is going from the south to the north, that is completely intersecting the other one. And guess where it's intersecting? In a place called Little Egypt. And the solar eclipse happens on the very same day of the original plague in Egypt of the 3 days of darkness. And in that area, they have cities called Karnak and Goshen and Cairo. And it's unbelievable.
And that's no way that's just a coincidence, is it?
Yeah, there are no coincidences with God. When they take place, the date on the biblical calendar is the first day of the month of Nisan. That is the very day God's glory fell, when they inaugurated Moses' tabernacle. Okay, and so and Nisan 1 is the beginning of the religious calendar year. That's the very day that God said, here's when you begin the religious calendar. And then Tishri 1, I don't know how many of your listeners are familiar with Tishri 1. That's Rosh Hashanah. That's the anniversary when Adam was created. And that's one of the days God says that he wants us to celebrate. So one of them kind of is a celebration of humanity. The other one is a celebration of our salvation. Okay, we have the new birth, physical birth, and then our spiritual birth. Well, what blows me away is these solar eclipses that are happen on Nisan 1 and Tishri 1. Nisan 1 and Tishri 1, back to back. And so one is the religious calendar, one is the civil calendar. But then the total lunar eclipses that are coming over the next couple of years fall on Purim, which is the month of Adar, which is where Esther fought Amalek. And so here it's falling on the very day that Amalek wanted to destroy Israel. And then they occur on the 15th day of the month of Elul, which is just before the month of all the fall holidays. Elul is the month of repentance. And so you can only have a solar eclipse on a new moon. You can only have a lunar eclipse on a full moon. So when God is using these solar eclipses to fall on Nisan 1, Tishri 1, Elul 15, Adar 15, these are telling us war is definitely coming over the United States, guaranteed.